The house grows quieter than you ever imagined. After years of laughter, arguments, and footsteps moving up and down the hallway, suddenly there is only silence. For some men, it comes after a divorce, the long struggle of holding a marriage together finally giving way. For others, it follows the heartbreaking loss of a wife who shared decades of life and memory. And for many, it happens when the children are grown, building their own lives, leaving the home you once filled with love and noise now standing still. At first, the stillness feels heavy, almost foreign. Dinner for one, turning off the lights when you choose, hearing your own footsteps echo in empty rooms. It can strike the heart like a reminder of what's gone. Yet in time, something shifts. That silence begins to reveal not emptiness, but possibility. It opens a doorway to clarity, peace, and even renewal. What once felt like an ending slowly begins to look like a beginning. In this reflection, we will explore 9 honest, deeply felt benefits of living alone as an older man. Truths that show this chapter can be not only survivable, but profoundly meaningful. There is a freedom that only reveals itself when life has slowed down, when the noise of obligation begins to fade, and when the roles you once carried no longer demand every ounce of your energy. At first, living alone can feel like a punishment, a stark reminder of what is gone. The silence seems too large, too heavy, pressing in on you when you wake up to an empty house or sit down to a meal for one. Yet, with time, the silence softens. It no longer shouts of loss but whispers of choice. That is when true freedom begins to show its face, not with fireworks or grand celebrations, but with small, almost invisible moments of ownership over your own life. For decades, many men have risen and fallen with the rhythm of others. The alarm clock isn't just for you. It is for the family you need to provide for, the children who must be taken to school, and the work that never waits. The meals are cooked to satisfy everyone else's tastes, the house is kept in a way that pleases others, and the schedule is shaped around demands that leave little room for your own desires. Living alone for the first time strips away all those layers. Suddenly, you are not a provider, not a mediator, not someone bending to fit another's pattern. You wake when your body tells you it is ready. You make your coffee strong, weak, or not at all, because no one is there to correct you. You leave dishes in the sink without guilt, knowing they will wait until you feel like washing them. This freedom isn't about neglect or selfishness. It is about remembering that you belong to yourself, that your time and choices matter. After years of being asked, "What's for dinner?" or "When will you be home?" there is a peculiar joy in realizing no one is waiting with demands. There is a kind of lightness in moving through your day at your own pace, a rhythm that finally matches your soul. Richard, a retired math teacher, once spoke about this shift. After his divorce, he moved into a modest apartment on the edge of town. The first night nearly broke him. The quiet felt suffocating, the walls closing in like a cage. But by the end of the week, something remarkable happened. He pulled out his old sketchbook, a hobby he had abandoned decades ago. He played music he had hidden away on dusty shelves. One evening, he even danced alone in the living room, laughing at the absurdity of it but savoring the joy. "I didn't realize how much of myself I had packed away," he said. "Now I can hear myself think. I can hear myself live." That is the essence of true freedom. Not the absence of responsibility, but the presence of self. You begin to build days around what matters to you, not what is expected of you. Perhaps it is taking a long morning walk without telling anyone where you're going. Perhaps it is sitting by the window with a book until the sun fades, unbothered by chores or timetables. Or maybe it is the joy of cooking the same simple meal 3 nights in a row just because you enjoy it. These are not luxuries. They are acts of healing, reminders that your preferences, your little rituals, your way of living still carry weight. True freedom is quiet, almost invisible to others. It doesn't need to be proven or displayed. It doesn't ask permission or seek applause. It simply exists in the daily choices that are yours alone. The freedom to say yes to what you love, and no to what no longer serves you. The freedom to rest when you are tired, to work when you are inspired, to move at a pace that feels honest rather than hurried. For men who have spent lifetimes caring, adjusting, and accommodating, this kind of freedom is not indulgence, it is restoration. It is the chance to reclaim parts of yourself that were set aside for the sake of others. It is remembering that even now, especially now, your life is still your own to shape. Living alone allows you to experience that truth fully, without apology. And maybe for the first time in years, you are not living as a role. Husband, father, provider. You are simply living as yourself. That realization can feel strange at first, even frightening. But once you lean into it, it becomes one of the greatest gifts this stage of life has to offer. So when you wake tomorrow, let the day unfold without rushing. Let the silence remind you that you are still here, still capable, still free. That is true freedom. The freedom of being enough, exactly as you are, in the quiet of your own company. There is a kind of silence that feels like a stranger when it first arrives. For men who have lived decades in houses filled with voices, laughter, arguments, and the endless hum of daily life, that sudden stillness can feel almost unbearable. The clatter of dinner plates, the shuffle of children running through hallways, the sound of a partner's voice calling from another room, all of it fades, and what remains is air that feels too sharp, too empty. In those first days, quiet can seem like an enemy. It amplifies the absence, making every memory louder, every loss heavier. Many try to drown it out with television playing in every room, radios blaring before the sun even rises, anything to cover the echo of solitude. But what feels like an unbearable void, over time, begins to change. The very thing that once felt like punishment slowly becomes the medicine that soothes the deepest wounds. Quiet heals what chaos damaged. For years, the chaos of responsibility drives men forward without pause. There were bills to pay, schedules to keep, arguments to smooth over, and countless details that never stopped pressing down. In that chaos, you forget how to breathe. You forget how to hear your own thoughts. You live in constant reaction to what others need from you, carrying tension in your shoulders, waking up in the night with racing thoughts, pushing yourself to perform even when you are exhausted. The body remembers that pressure long after the house goes still. The nervous system, wound tight like a spring, doesn't know how to stop spinning. It is in the presence of quiet, however unsettling at first, that the spring begins to unwind. Samuel, 73, shared his story with a kind of gentle honesty. He had lived most of his life in a bustling household. Kids arguing at the table, grandchildren visiting on weekends, a wife who filled the rooms with music and conversation. But after she passed and the children moved away, he found himself waking up to mornings that felt hollow. At first, he filled the air with noise, news broadcasts, records, anything that might keep the silence at bay. But one morning, for reasons he still cannot explain, he left everything off. He brewed his coffee and simply sat by the window, watching the steam rise and dissolve in the cool morning light. It felt like the first time in years I could hear myself think, he said. And I realized I wasn't broken. I was just tired. Silence is where I started to mend. That is the hidden gift of quiet. When the constant buzz of demands is gone, the body begins to soften. The pulse steadies. The breath deepens. Thoughts stop racing and start to drift back to center. What once felt like emptiness begins to reveal texture, depth, and presence. The creak of the wood floor, the rustle of leaves outside, the distant hum of a passing car. All of these small sounds become anchors, gentle reminders that you are still here, still alive, still capable of noticing beauty. In chaos, beauty is drowned out by urgency. In quiet, beauty becomes visible again. Healing through silence is not about erasing grief. It is about giving grief room to breathe. Too often, men are taught to outrun sorrow, to bury it beneath work or distraction. But in silence, sorrow no longer needs to be chased away. It can sit beside you, not as an enemy but as a companion, reminding you of the love that once filled your life. Over time, the sharpness of pain softens, and the silence that once felt like a weight begins to feel like a blanket. It holds you, not with noise or answers, but with presence. There is also strength in realizing you no longer need to fear the quiet. You don't need to run from it or stuff it full of distractions. Instead, you can let it be what it is, a mirror reflecting your own resilience. Quiet reveals what chaos concealed, that beneath the noise, you are still whole. That even when the world goes still around you, you remain. Many older men discover that once they stop resisting silence, they begin to find peace in small rituals. Sitting outside at dawn with a cup of tea. Listening to the sound of rain without rushing to do anything else. letting the sun warm their face through the kitchen window while they eat breakfast slowly. These moments are not dramatic, but they are powerful. They are the body and soul learning, at last, to rest. Chaos teaches us to keep moving, to never pause, to treat stillness as weakness. But quiet teaches something far different. It teaches patience. It teaches the value of listening, not just to others, but to yourself. It teaches that healing is not always loud or fast. Sometimes it is as subtle as noticing your breath on a cold morning or allowing yourself to cry without shame. Quiet does not erase the past, but it gives you space to carry it without breaking under the weight. And so the silence that once felt unbearable becomes the foundation for a new kind of life. It becomes the place where your spirit stretches out, unclenched, unhurried, at peace. Quiet heals what chaos damaged, and in its embrace, you begin to understand that this stage of life is not an ending, but a return to yourself, to calm, to the steady rhythm of your own heart. There is a certain comfort that only comes when you walk through the front door and know that every detail around you is yours. For many older men, this is the first time in decades that feeling has been possible. When you live with a spouse, children, or even roommates, the home is always shared. Every choice, from where the sofa sits, to what pictures hang on the wall, to what meals are cooked, has to be negotiated or silently compromised. But when you live alone, something shifts. Suddenly, you hold the reins. The space belongs to you, and for perhaps the first time since youth, your home reflects not obligation but identity. It is not about expensive furniture or remodeling with the latest styles. It is about meaning. It is about being surrounded by things that feel like an extension of your life, your memories, your comfort. Leo, a 70-year-old widower, once described this transformation. After his wife passed, he moved into a modest 2-room house. On paper, it was nothing grand, but he made it his. One wall became his memory wall, photographs of his time in the Navy, snapshots of his children when they were small, a fishing trip where he caught the biggest bass of his life. He placed his favorite worn recliner by the window where the afternoon sun came in just right. A small radio played old country songs that took him back decades. No decorator would have arranged it that way, but to Leo it was perfect. "Everything in here makes sense to me," he said with a smile. That is the beauty of living alone. The rules are yours, and the comfort is yours too. Research even shows that this sense of control is not just sentimental. It has real effects on well-being. Having the power to decide what your space looks and feels like can improve mental health, reduce anxiety, and slow the decline of memory and cognition. But the science only confirms what men like Leo already know deep down. Choosing what you wake up to every day is empowering. When you can sit in your favorite chair, when you hang the photographs that speak to your heart, when the smell in your kitchen is the one you prefer, it tells you something vital. You still matter here. Living alone means no one questions why you still hold onto that old jacket hanging by the door, or why you keep your books stacked in uneven piles instead of neat rows. No one sighs when you leave the crossword unfinished on the coffee table or when you decide to eat breakfast at 2 in the afternoon. Those little freedoms may seem small to others, but to the man who has spent years adjusting himself to fit everyone else's needs, they are powerful. They restore a sense of dignity that only comes when you are no longer performing for anyone. And yet, this freedom is not about shutting others out. It is about creating a sanctuary that welcomes you home at the end of every day. When you live alone, your home becomes a mirror. If it feels cold or bare, it may reflect your own neglect. But if you let it, your home can become a place of healing, filled with warmth, familiarity, and the quiet assurance that you belong in it. A simple lamp placed by the chair where you like to read, a blanket folded neatly at the foot of the bed, a picture framed by the kitchen sink to keep you company while you wash dishes. These details are not trivial. They are reminders that you deserve comfort, that you deserve a space that feels like it was made for you. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 1 below to let me know that you are still here with me. Too often, older men fear that living alone means drifting into loneliness. But loneliness is not always about the absence of people. Sometimes it is about the absence of meaning in your surroundings. When you take ownership of your home, when you shape it to your rhythm and your memories, you find that solitude is not empty. It is full of presence. Your presence. So hang the photos that bring back your best years. Keep the books you actually read, even if their covers are worn. Play the records that stir your soul, no matter if the needle scratches. Cook the meals that you love, even if no one else is there to taste them. In these small acts, you remind yourself that this house is not just a structure. It is a home. And in this season of life, it is the place where you finally get to say, without hesitation, "This is me." Because after years of bending, adjusting, and giving, you deserve a space that bends toward you. After years of carrying others, you deserve walls that carry your stories. And after years of meeting everyone else's needs, you deserve to come home to a place that reflects yours. Your home, your rules. There comes a moment, often in the stillness of an ordinary afternoon, when a man sitting alone in his chair realizes he is no longer defined by the roles he once carried. For years, maybe decades, he was someone's husband, someone's father, someone's provider. Every decision he made, from the long hours at work to the way he spent a Saturday morning, was shaped by the needs of others. But when the house grows quiet and those roles fall away, a question rises gently but insistently. Who am I now? That question can feel unsettling at first. Without the structure of responsibility, many men feel lost, as though their value has been stripped away. Yet, hidden inside that question is an invitation, one of the most profound opportunities of later life, the chance to rediscover yourself. When you live alone, the noise of constant obligation fades, and in its place comes space. Space to remember what once made you curious, what once made you smile, what once gave you a sense of purpose beyond duty. Thomas, 65, spent most of his life as an engineer. Reliable, meticulous, the kind of man who never missed a deadline. After retirement and a quiet divorce, he found himself in a one-bedroom apartment with nothing but time. At first, it felt like an empty sentence. The hours stretched, unfilled, mocking him with their silence. But then one evening, he pulled a book of philosophy from the shelf, a book that had sat unopened for years. He read slowly, letting the ideas sink in. Soon began journaling, capturing thoughts he never had time to explore before. Later, he bought a used camera and started photographing the river at dawn. "I don't know if it's art," he said, "but I finally feel like I'm seeing the world again. And maybe, for the first time, I'm starting to see myself too." That is the gift of solitude. The mirror it offers is honest but not cruel. No one is watching, no one is judging. You can try things, stumble, start again, and it doesn't matter. The process itself becomes the reward. For many men, this rediscovery begins with small acts: dusting off an old guitar, planting tomatoes in the backyard, or learning a language they once wished they had studied. These activities may not earn applause, but they awaken something inside, a reminder that you are more than the roles you played. It is easy to believe that growing older means narrowing down, shrinking into fewer possibilities. But in truth, later life can widen into new horizons. The rediscovery of self is not about reinventing. It is about uncovering. Beneath the years of labor, compromise, and responsibility, there are layers of dreams and passions that never left, only waited. When you live alone, you finally have the quiet to listen to them. This journey is not always comfortable. Some men sit in silence and feel confronted by regrets, by questions of what could have been. Yet even in that discomfort lies a path forward. Writing those regrets down, speaking them aloud, or turning them into lessons for the next chapter is itself a form of rediscovery. It is acknowledging the man you were while giving permission to the man you are becoming. And what emerges is often surprising. A man who once dismissed painting as frivolous finds joy in watercolors. Another who never cooked discovers the art of seasoning a stew until it tastes just right. Some return to faith, others to travel, still others to volunteer work that fills their days with meaning. In each case, the rediscovery is deeply personal, guided not by obligation but by desire. Living alone creates the environment for this transformation, but it requires courage to accept the invitation. It asks you to sit with yourself, to let the silence speak, to trust that you are not finished yet. Because you are not. You are still learning, still capable of surprise, still able to create. Perhaps the greatest truth about rediscovering yourself is this. It is not about finding a brand new man but reconnecting with the one who has always been there. The boy who once dreamed of playing baseball, the young man who loved reading poetry in secret, the middle-aged father who wanted to write but never had the time. He is still there, waiting for you to make room for him again. So when the day feels too quiet, when you wonder what is left, remember that solitude is not emptiness, it is space. And in that space, you have the chance to rediscover what makes you alive. Not useful, not dutiful, but alive. And that might just be the most sacred journey of all. There is a certain relief that arrives when the heavy demands of life finally begin to ease, and it often comes into focus only when a man finds himself living alone. For decades, money was never really his. It was the family's, the mortgage companies, the college tuition offices, the repairman's, the endless list of bills that drained the paycheck before it could even settle in the account. Every dollar seemed spoken for long before it was earned. Even the small pleasures, the fishing rod he wanted or the weekend trip he dreamed of, were postponed, sacrificed in the name of responsibility. But then the house grows quiet. The children are out on their own, the debts are lighter, and the budget begins to reflect a new reality. What once felt like survival slowly transforms into something else. This is financial freedom, not in the sense of wealth or luxury, but in the sense of clarity, choice, and control. Living alone changes the scale of everything. The big house that once bustled with life now seems too large, its empty rooms echoing with the past. Downsizing, which might have felt like a loss before, now feels like liberation. A smaller home means lower bills, fewer repairs, and less space to heat and cool. It means money can stretch further, not because more is coming in, but because less is being demanded of it. For many older men, this shift is the first time they experience the power of choosing where money goes, rather than watching it vanish into obligations. And the beauty of this stage is that spending itself changes. The temptation to impress others, to keep up appearances, to buy what is expected rather than what is wanted, fades away. In its place comes a gentler rhythm of choices. The comfortable chair that makes reading enjoyable, the simple vacation that brings rest rather than debt, the hobby supplies that spark creativity without guilt. Money, once a source of stress and sacrifice, becomes a tool for comfort and peace. There is also a healing that comes from no longer asking the quiet question that haunted so many purchases. Will they be okay if I spend this on myself? For years, the needs of children, spouses, or relatives took priority. Shoes for the kids before a new pair for yourself. A family car before a fishing boat. Groceries for a table of 6 before even thinking of dining out alone. But now, with those obligations eased, the freedom to finally meet your own needs, however small, feels like reclaiming a piece of dignity that was long deferred. Financial freedom does not erase every worry. Retirement accounts still need attention, medical costs still linger in the background, and no one is truly free from unexpected expenses. But the difference lies in perspective. Instead of being constantly stretched thin, you find space. You find that the balance in your account, however modest, belongs fully to you. It is not survival money. It is life money. It allows you to breathe easier, to make choices without the knot of fear in your stomach. Take the story of Leonard, 72, who, after selling the family home, moved into a small condo downtown. At first, he feared the change would make him feel diminished. Instead, it gave him strength. I didn't realize how much that big house was costing me, not just in money, but in energy, he said. Now, my bills are manageable. I eat what I want, when I want. And for the first time, I bought myself a guitar. Not because I need it, but because I wanted it. And that felt like freedom. This stage of life brings the chance to simplify. To let go of what no longer serves you, to stop chasing what never really mattered, and to choose instead what brings peace. It might mean fewer things but deeper satisfaction. It might mean smaller spaces but greater comfort. It might mean spending less money but feeling richer than ever before. And perhaps the greatest gift is this. Financial freedom allows you to stop apologizing for putting yourself first. It reminds you that your worth is not in what you can provide for others, but in the life you allow yourself to live now. It is not about having more. It is about finally using what you have in a way that honors you. So when you look at your bank statement, instead of seeing a list of sacrifices, see a map of choices. Each dollar spent on your comfort, your health, your joy, is a declaration that you are still here, still deserving. Living alone gives you that power. The freedom to direct your resources toward what truly matters, the freedom to create a life not of survival, but of meaning. And in that freedom, money becomes what it was always meant to be. Not a weight, but a tool for living fully. There is a kind of weight that settles on a man's shoulders after years of being everything to everyone. It builds so slowly that he hardly notices it, until one day he realizes he has been carrying the tension of a lifetime. The constant need to provide, to mediate, to smooth over arguments, to keep the family safe and steady, leaves scars that are not always visible. Living alone, at first, feels like another burden, a reminder of absence and change. But over time, something begins to shift. The expectations fall away. The roles grow lighter. And in that release comes something many men have not felt in decades: peace. That peace is the foundation of better mental health, not because solitude erases every sorrow, but because it allows the mind to breathe again. For years, the daily grind often meant living in reaction, reacting to deadlines at work, to the needs of children, to the moods of a spouse, to the pressure of neighbors or society. There was little room for stillness, little time to notice your own state of mind. Stress became the background noise of life, a steady hum that never shut off. It tightened the chest, shortened the breath, disturbed the sleep. But when the house becomes quiet, the hum fades. The mind, startled at first, learns to rest. The silence that once seemed threatening turns into a kind of medicine, a gentle space where thoughts are no longer drowned out by demands. Imagine waking in the morning without a list already waiting. No one asks, "What's for breakfast?" No phone buzzing with obligations. Instead, the first sound is the kettle boiling. The first sight is the sunlight spreading across the floor. The pace is your own, unhurried, deliberate. This is not isolation. It is restoration. Mental health thrives when the nervous system is allowed to settle, when the body is no longer forced to live in constant alert. Living alone, a man discovers he can exhale without realizing he has been holding his breath for years. Simple rituals take on new power. A daily walk through the neighborhood clears the mind in ways no medication ever fully could. Sitting by the window with a warm cup of coffee, allowing the silence to surround him, brings back a steadiness long forgotten. Even the smallest routines, a crossword puzzle, a few quiet minutes of deep breathing, the act of tending to a plant, become anchors of calm. These are not luxuries. They are practices of healing. It is true that loneliness sometimes visits. The absence of others can ache, especially in the evenings when the world feels far away. But loneliness is not the opposite of peace. In fact, they often arrive together. And with time, the ache grows softer, because it is no longer sharpened by resentment, conflict, or constant stress. In the stillness, loneliness loses its edge and becomes something gentler, a reminder that you are still capable of feeling deeply. There is also a mental strength that grows from no longer needing to explain yourself. In shared spaces, choices are often second-guessed, questioned, or reshaped by others' needs. Alone, those expectations vanish. You begin to trust your own rhythm. You start to believe that your preferences matter, that your decisions are enough. This self-trust is a form of mental healing, a steady rebuilding of confidence that may have been chipped away over the years. Take the example of Arthur, 68, who admitted he had lived most of his marriage under constant pressure to keep the peace. Arguments with his wife, tension with his grown children, and even conflicts at work followed him into every corner of his life. He described always feeling like he was on stage, careful with every word, carrying the weight of others' emotions. But after his wife's passing and his retirement, something unexpected happened. Alone in his small home, he began to sleep more deeply. He started painting again, something he hadn't done since his 20s. "I didn't know how heavy the noise was until it was gone," he said. "Now my thoughts feel like they belong to me again." If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment 2 below to let me know that you are still here with me. That is the essence of better mental health in older age. Not the absence of pain, but the presence of calm. It does not mean sorrow disappears. Grief, memory, and regret remain, but they no longer dominate. They take their place among gentler emotions: gratitude, curiosity, even joy. The mind becomes less of a battlefield and more of a garden, tended slowly, patiently, until peace grows where pressure once lived. And perhaps the most powerful realization of all is that living alone allows space for acceptance. Acceptance of what was, of what is, and of what may never be. Acceptance quiets the racing thoughts and soothes the restlessness. It tells the heart that it does not need to perform anymore, that simply being is enough. So better mental health does not come from chasing distractions or running from the silence. It comes from embracing the slower rhythm of life, from allowing the nervous system to reset, from letting the mind unclench. Living alone creates the environment for this transformation, but it is the choice to lean into peace that makes it real. And when a man discovers that, he begins to feel not diminished by solitude, but strengthened by it. He realizes he is not merely surviving these later years, he is healing within them. When a man begins spending more time alone, something unexpected happens to the way he sees relationships. At first, the quiet feels like a void, an empty space where voices used to echo. Family dinners are fewer, phone calls come less often, and visits with friends are scattered across the calendar. It can feel like life has narrowed down to silence. But with time, a different truth emerges. The quiet does not erase connection, it refines it. Relationships become less frequent, perhaps, but far more meaningful. They shift from obligation to intention, from habit to heart. This change is one of the quiet gifts of living alone. Relationships become deeper. When you are surrounded by people every day, it is easy to sinto and toe a routine. Conversations at the dinner table become rushed or shallow. Phone calls blur together, visits feel like duties to check off rather than moments to savor. But when the noise falls away and solitude fills the room, you begin to notice who really matters. The absence of constant chatter sharpens your awareness of true connection. A call from your grown daughter no longer feels like another task. It feels like grace. A visit from an old friend carries a weight that lingers long after the door closes. Even a short note in the mail or a message saying, "Thinking of you," can light up an entire week. Living alone also gives you the emotional space to show up differently. Without the stress of constant demands pulling you in a dozen directions, you have more patience to listen, more presence to offer. When someone sits across from you, you are not distracted by what comes next. You are there, fully. And when you speak, your words come from reflection, not reaction. You no longer feel the need to prove yourself or to fill every silence. Instead, you share from a place of honesty and calm. That shift transforms ordinary interactions into meaningful exchanges. Some men even discover that solitude helps them release relationships that were built on duty rather than truth. The old acquaintances that drained more than they gave, the connections kept alive only by guilt or habit, those begin to fade. And in their place remain the people who genuinely care, who show up not because they must but because they want to. The circle may grow smaller, but the bonds grow stronger. It is a refinement that feels less like loss and more like clarity. James, a 71-year-old widower, put it this way: "When my wife was alive, our house was always full, neighbors, church friends, family. After she passed, the visits stopped. For a while, I thought I'd been forgotten. But then I realized something. The ones who still came, the ones who still called, they were the ones who truly mattered. And those conversations meant more than all the crowded dinners we ever had." His story is not unusual. Many men discover that while the quantity of interactions decreases, the quality soars. In this stage of life, you begin to see that depth is more sustaining than frequency. A single heartfelt conversation can bring more comfort than a dozen superficial ones. A lunch with a grown child, unhurried and genuine, can fill you with warmth for weeks. Even the companionship of a neighbor who stops by with a plate of cookies becomes an act of kindness that echoes deeply. Relationships no longer feel like noise to fill the day. They feel like lifelines of meaning. This depth also reshapes the way you love. You no longer take presence for granted. You appreciate the pauses, the silences, the unspoken care in a simple gesture. Love becomes less about constant proximity and more about intentional connection. And when you do see someone you care about, the time feels sacred, not routine. Living alone may look like isolation from the outside, but on the inside, it often leads to a richer form of connection. You realize you don't need a crowd to feel loved. You need only a handful of hearts that make room for yours. The quiet between visits is not empty. It builds appreciation. It makes the moments together glow brighter. So relationships in this chapter of life are not about filling the calendar. They are about filling the soul. They become slower, softer, deeper. They remind you that even though you live alone, you do not live unloved. And maybe that is what true connection has always been. Not constant presence, but shared meaning across the quiet spaces in between. There is something quietly powerful that happens when a man begins to live alone and learns to do things for himself again. At first, the adjustment can feel clumsy, even intimidating. Small tasks once shared or handled by someone else now rest squarely on his shoulders. Fixing a leaky faucet, preparing meals, keeping track of medications, managing bills, all of these may seem daunting in the beginning. But as the days pass and each challenge is met, something begins to stir beneath the surface. Confidence. Not the loud confidence of youth that needed to prove itself, but a steadier, wiser strength born from experience. This is where self-reliance returns, not as a burden, but as a reminder that you are still capable, still grounded, still strong. It often starts with the little things. The jar that was too tight finally opens after a determined twist. The computer that froze responds after a bit of patient troubleshooting. A meal, thrown together with whatever is in the pantry, turns out better than expected. Each of these moments carries a message. You can do this. You do not need to be rescued. You may move more slowly now, but the ability to stand on your own has not left you. Living alone magnifies these victories, allowing them to shine with importance. In youth, independence is often loud, driving across the country, chasing careers, taking risks. In later life, independence is quieter but no less meaningful. It is found in paying the bills on time without help. It is in asking clear questions at the doctor's office and advocating for your own care. It is in deciding when you want assistance and when you'd rather figure it out yourself. This choice, even when it leads to trial and error, reinforces strength. Each step affirms that while the body may have slowed, the spirit is still resilient. For men who have spent much of their lives defined by providing for others, learning to provide for themselves can feel like unfamiliar territory. Yet it brings with it a new kind of pride. Cooking a meal exactly the way you like it, arranging the house to suit your rhythm, or fixing a household problem without calling for help, these are not just chores. They are affirmations that you still know how to navigate life. They remind you of all the times you solved harder problems, overcame bigger setbacks, and carried heavier loads. That memory of resilience fuels today's confidence. Charles, a 70-year-old retired mechanic, described the feeling perfectly. After his wife passed, he had to learn tasks she always handled, balancing the checkbook, shopping for groceries, and even managing prescriptions. At first I was scared I'd mess it up, he admitted. But the more I did it, the prouder I felt. I realized I wasn't helpless. I just hadn't been asked to do it in years. Now I know I can take care of myself. That realization shifted something deep inside him. He no longer saw himself as a man diminished by loss, but as someone reclaiming strength. Confidence in later life is not about proving to others what you can do. It is about proving to yourself that you still can. Living alone gives you the space to rebuild that trust. You stop second-guessing your choices. You begin to believe once again in your judgment, your instincts, your abilities. Even mistakes become part of the process, teaching you patience and adaptability. And with each challenge met, the fear of being incapable shrinks. Self-reliance also brings a subtle but important change in the way you see yourself. Instead of focusing on what has been lost, you begin to notice what remains. The steady hands that can still repair a broken hinge. The sharp mind that can still manage finances. The body that, even if slower, still carries you through each day. These recognitions build a quiet confidence, one that does not need applause because it lives in the bones. And perhaps the greatest gift of renewed confidence is the way it restores dignity. Relying on others is not a weakness, but being able to choose when you ask for help and when you do it yourself gives you control. It reminds you that you are not defined solely by age or limitations. You are defined by the choices you still have, the skills you still carry, and the resilience that never left you. Living alone does not mean doing everything alone. It means knowing you can stand when needed, and also knowing you have the wisdom to ask for support when the time is right. That balance, between independence and humility, becomes the mark of maturity. So as the days unfold, each small victory becomes more than a task completed. It is a testament that you are still capable, still learning, still growing. Confidence and self-reliance do not belong only to the young. They return, seasoned and steady, in the quiet of solitude. And when they do, they remind you of a timeless truth. You are not finished yet. You are still standing strong. There comes a time when the grand pursuits of youth give way to something gentler, something quieter, and perhaps something even more meaningful. For a man living alone in his later years, joy no longer comes from chasing the next achievement or proving himself to the world. Instead, it begins to reveal itself in the ordinary moments that once passed unnoticed. This is the gift of solitude, the chance to see life through a slower lens, to discover that joy hides not in the extraordinary, but in the simple things. The morning sun, for instance, takes on new significance. When you live alone, you are free to rise when your body is ready, not when an alarm demands it. Sitting by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the light spill across the floor, can feel like a quiet blessing. The steam rising from the mug, the soft sound of birds greeting the day, these are not just background details anymore. They are the day itself, rich and alive. The world, once blurred by the rush of responsibility, comes back into focus. This slower rhythm allows small pleasures to become sacred. The feel of soil on your hands as you tend a garden. The smell of an old book as you turn its pages. The sound of rain tapping on the roof while you rest in your favorite chair. None of these would make headlines, but each carries a weight of comfort and meaning. When no one is around to demand your attention, you have the time and presence to notice them fully. And in noticing, you begin to see that joy was never gone. It was simply buried beneath the noise. Many men find themselves reconnecting with hobbies or passions they once dismissed as trivial. Playing a record from decades past and letting the music fill the house. Cooking a simple meal and savoring it slowly without rushing. Even taking a walk, not for exercise or obligation, but simply to feel the air, to watch the trees sway, to let the mind wander. These experiences remind you that happiness doesn't always arrive with applause. Sometimes it comes quietly, waiting for you to pay attention. There is also a freedom in realizing you no longer need to perform for anyone else's approval. In earlier years, so much of life was spent proving worth. Through career, through providing, through being strong for others. But now, joy is not about proving. It is about being. The soft glow of a candle at night, the warmth of a blanket on a cool morning, the satisfaction of finishing a puzzle, all of these small things whisper the same truth. You are allowed to enjoy life simply for the sake of enjoying it. Edward, 74, described this discovery after his wife passed. 4 months, he struggled with loneliness, filling the silence with television and errands he didn't need. But one evening, he turned off the TV, lit a small lamp, and listened to an old jazz record. For the first time in a long while, he said, I felt content. Not excited, not distracted, just content. And I realized that was enough. His story is one of many. Time and again, older men find that once they stop chasing after what is gone, they begin to savor what remains. If you are still watching this video and find these lessons useful, please comment below to let me know that you are still here with me. The beauty of simple joy is that it does not depend on wealth, youth, or external validation. It depends only on presence. When you live alone, presence becomes easier to cultivate. With fewer distractions, fewer demands, you are free to give yourself fully to the moment in front of you. And in doing so, you discover that the small details of daily life, once overlooked, are actually the threads that weave meaning into your days. This shift also brings with it a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the meal you prepared, for the memory held in an old photograph, for the steady rhythm of your breath at night. Gratitude, in turn, deepens joy, making even the simplest experiences feel abundant. The world does not need to be spectacular to be worthwhile. It only needs to be noticed. Living alone may appear to outsiders as loneliness, but for many men it becomes a sanctuary. A place where the heart can slow down, where the soul can rediscover wonder, where joy is found not in doing more, but in being present to less. And in that presence, life feels not diminished, but enriched. So perhaps the greatest secret of this stage of life is this: joy has never been about the extraordinary. It has always been waiting in the simple things, the warmth of sunlight, the taste of good food, the sound of a familiar song, the peace of an evening spent in your own company. When you finally have the space to notice them, you realize that joy was never far away. It was always here, in the little things, steady and enough. In the quiet of an empty house, It is easy to believe that living alone is a sign of loss, a reminder of what has slipped away. But as the days unfold, something else begins to take shape. Solitude is not failure. It is freedom. It is the gentle return of your own rhythm, the healing that comes when you no longer have to bend to every demand, the peace of knowing that your life still belongs to you. Living alone does not erase the years you spent caring for others. It honors them by giving you the chance to finally care for yourself. This stage of life is not about what is missing, but about what remains and what can still grow. It is about noticing the sunlight through your window, savoring a meal cooked just for you, picking up an old passion, and letting it spark again. It is about creating a home that reflects who you are now, not who you were asked to be. These are not small things. They are the threads of dignity, comfort, and meaning that hold life together in later years. So let this chapter remind you, you are not finished, and you are not alone. Your story still matters, and your presence still carries weight. If this message has touched you, I invite you to share your own reflections in the comments below. Tell us what living alone has taught you, or what small joys keep you grounded. And if you found value here, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who may need encouragement. Sometimes the simplest story, told at the right time, can change not just a day, but a life.